Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be taking a bit of a journey into some pretty fascinating stuff, I think we could say, right? Where spirituality meets science.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've given us some pretty interesting source material, the law of one and principles of quantum physics.
A fascinating pairing, I'd say.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this deep dive, I think, so exciting. We're going to be looking for parallels between the law of one and quantum physics, hoping to gain some insights that might help you listening better understand and apply the law of one principles.
And maybe uncover some surprising connections along the way.
Who knows? That's right. Now, the law of one, this is really interesting. It proposes this idea of densities,
Mm.
7 levels of spiritual evolution that lead us toward this unity with the Creator.
hmm
It raises some really big questions about, I think, the nature of reality and our own personal journey as spiritual beings, right?
Absolutely. And that's where I think, having someone to help bridge these seemingly different fields is so helpful.
Exactly. So I'm excited to see how quantum physics might kind of illuminate our understanding of the law of one. So let's start by unpacking the basics. What are the core principles of the law of one?
Well, at its heart, the law of one really emphasizes the concept of unity, right? That everything's interconnected, part of one universal consciousness, the
So
creator.
it's kind of like a recognition of our interconnectedness and making choices that kind of align with this higher purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that resonates with me. Now, the law of one also mentions these 7 densities, each kind of representing a stage of spiritual growth toward this unity with the Creator, right?
Precisely. It's kind of this fascinating concept of a progressive journey, right? Through these densities where each stage kind of represents an evolution of consciousness.
Okay, so how does quantum physics kind of fit into all of this? How are we connecting these two ideas?
Well, one of the key points that the law of one makes is that our reality is shaped by our choices.
Okay.
And this is interesting because this kind of echoes the observer effect in quantum physics, which suggests that the act of observing a phenomenon actually can influence its outcome.
So our consciousness is actually playing a role in creating our own reality.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a powerful idea. I like that. That seems to align with some of the more, I guess you could say, esoteric concepts in the law of one.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the law of one also talks about archetypes, these universal patterns and images that kind of influence our lives. From a quantum physics perspective, it's really fascinating to consider how phenomena like superposition,
Yeah.
where particles exist in multiple states until observed, might relate to these archetypes.
Absolutely.
So are you saying that maybe by focusing on certain archetypes, we're actually collapsing those possibilities into our own personal experience?
Yeah, it's a thought-provoking idea, isn't it?
That's a very trippy idea.
If we consider quantum entanglement, where particles are linked no matter the distance, it aligns with the law of one's emphasis on interconnectedness of all things, too.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
It's like these quantum principles are almost the scientific lens through which we can kind of grasp these spiritual concepts a little better.
Mm-hmm.
The law of one also discusses these energy centers, chakras, and their influence on our well-being. Is there a connection there to quantum physics as well?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
So the law of one emphasizes the importance of balancing these energy centers for our, overall well-being, and suggests that blockages can create imbalances in our physical, emotional, and even spiritual states.
Okay.
And it's interesting to think about how this might relate to the concept of energy fields in quantum physics.
Yeah.
If we think of ourselves as complex energy systems,
Right.
finding that balance and harmony within those systems is crucial.
Yeah, I'm sensing a theme here for sure.
Yeah.
But of course, it's important to acknowledge, I think, the contrast between these two fields, right?
Right.
The law of one delves really deep into spiritual evolution, while quantum physics, as we understand it now, kind of focuses more on the material world, even when dealing with these tiny particles.
Exactly. We have to respect those differences even as we're exploring those potential connections. It's like comparing poetry and mathematics, different languages, different approaches.
I like that. Different approaches, but revealing different truths, right?
Yeah,
About the universe.
exactly.
I love that. But I'm also wondering, are there specific instances where the law of one and quantum physics might actually offer conflicting viewpoints?
That's a great question, and I think that's something that deserves a bit more exploration. Maybe we can delve into that in our next segment.
Okay, sounds good to me. Stay tuned because we're just getting started.
We are just getting started. Welcome back to our deep dive into the law of one and quantum physics.
Now, before the break, you mentioned that there could be some potential conflicts between the law of one and quantum physics.
That's where things get really interesting.
Yeah, I'm curious to explore those areas where these two perspectives might diverge.
Well, one area we see a potential contrast is in the concept of free will.
Okay.
The law of one really emphasizes the importance of choice, suggesting we have this free will to choose our path,
Right.
and that these choices actually influence our spiritual evolution.
Right, right, which makes sense given the law of one's focus on this spiritual growth in our journey toward, I guess, greater understanding and unity.
Exactly. However, certain interpretations of quantum physics suggest that reality might be more deterministic,
Okay.
with events unfolding according to these fixed laws and probabilities.
So while the law of one kind of emphasizes the power of choice,
Yeah,
quantum physics might suggest that our choices are kind of predetermined.
it does, doesn't it? And it's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Yeah, that seems like a fundamental difference.
It is, yeah. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between these two perspectives.
Okay.
Maybe we have a degree of free will within a framework of, pre-existing conditions and possibilities.
It's like we're navigating a river. We can choose how to steer our boat,
Right.
but the current and the riverbanks ultimately shape our journey.
I like that analogy. Yeah, it really highlights that interplay between choice and circumstance,
That's right.
between, individual agency and those larger forces at play.
Okay, so we've talked about that potential conflict in how the law of one and quantum physics approach free will.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other areas where these perspectives diverge?
Another point of contrast lies in their focus and scope.
Okay.
The law of one, as we've discussed, centers around spiritual evolution,
Right.
the nature of consciousness, and this journey toward unity with the Creator,
Okay.
offering, a framework for understanding the meaning and purpose of life from a spiritual perspective.
And it emphasizes those ethical principles, right?
Absolutely.
Like service to others and the importance of love and compassion.
Precisely. Quantum physics, on the other hand, primarily focuses on the physical laws governing the universe.
Okay.
Exploring the behavior of matter and energy at its most fundamental level.
So while the law of one is kind of offering us this spiritual lens for understanding reality, quantum physics is providing a scientific lens.
Exactly.
So they're approaching the same thing,
The same reality.
but from different angles.
Right, using different tools, different methods.
And while their areas of focus may differ, there's still these, intriguing points of overlap,
Absolutely.
as we've been discussing, right?
Yeah.
That's what I find so fascinating. It's like these two perspectives are pieces of a larger puzzle.
Right.
And by bringing them together, we might gain a more complete picture of reality, right?
I agree. It's like we're looking at a tapestry from both sides, right?
Right.
And the intricate patterns and colors, they become even more meaningful when we see how they connect and relate.
Right. Now, we've talked about, potential conflicts, contrasts,
Yeah.
but I'm curious to dive deeper into these parallels
Okay.
and see how those can help us actually apply the principles of the law of one in our lives.
That's a great idea. Let's explore some of those connections and see what insights emerge.
So earlier, you mentioned how the law of one suggests that our reality is kind of shaped by our choices,
Right.
which again kind of resonates with this observer effect
Yeah.
in quantum physics.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that connection a bit and how understanding the observer effect might actually change our approach to applying those law of one principles?
Certainly. So the observer effect, as we've talked about, suggests that the very act of observation can influence the outcome of an event at this quantum level.
Okay.
And it implies that consciousness isn't just passive, but rather an active participant in actually shaping reality.
So if we apply that to the law of one's emphasis on choice and spiritual evolution,
Mhm.
are you saying that our conscious choices are not only shaping our personal reality,
Right.
but also influencing this larger web of existence?
Precisely. If consciousness is playing an active role in shaping reality, as the observer effect suggests,
Right.
then our choices, our thoughts, our intentions, they all carry a certain weight, a certain power to influence the world around us.
That's a lot of responsibility.
It is, yeah.
But it's also empowering.
Uh-huh.
If we're co-creators of our own reality, we have this ability to make choices that align with our highest values.
Absolutely.
Choices that actually contribute to, the greater good.
That's where I think that wisdom of the law of one comes in.
Okay.
It provides this framework for making those choices, for aligning ourselves with those principles of love, compassion, and service to others.
So by understanding the observer effect, we kind of gain a deeper appreciation for the power of our choices,
Mm.
and a greater sense of responsibility for how we use that power.
I agree.
It's like the law of one is providing the ethical compass,
Mm,
and quantum physics is kind of revealing the mechanism
right.
by which our choices manifest in reality.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's not just about understanding the science, but
Mhm.
also about integrating those ethical principles that guide us toward a more compassionate and harmonious way of being.
Okay, that's a powerful message. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm also wondering, does quantum physics actually validate the law of one? Are we seeing scientific proof for these spiritual principles?
It's a question a lot of people ask,
Right.
and it's a tough one to address. While quantum physics does provide these, intriguing parallels and metaphors that help us grasp these concepts from the law of one,
Right.
it's important to remember that science and spirituality operate in different domains.
Okay.
Science relies on empirical evidence and testable hypotheses,
Right.
while the law of one comes from this channeled source, a different way of knowing.
Right.
And while there are some that believe that quantum physics might eventually provide scientific validation for these spiritual principles, it's important to approach it with an open mind and a healthy amount of skepticism as well.
So it's not about proving or disproving,
Right.
but about exploring these connections and how these two perspectives illuminate and enrich one another.
Exactly. I think that's what makes this exploration so rewarding. It's about expanding our understanding, challenging our assumptions, and discovering new ways of seeing the world and our place within it.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
But before we get too carried away with these grand ideas, I'd love to
Mhm.
bring it down to earth a bit. How can we actually use this knowledge in our everyday lives?
hmm
How can understanding quantum physics help us better embody the principles of the law of one?
That's a great question, and it's one that we'll delve into after the break, so stay with us.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on this fascinating journey exploring those connections between the law of one and quantum physics, kind of uncovering those parallels, acknowledging those contrasts, and I think now we're ready to get like practical, right?
Absolutely. Let's shift our focus now to how these ideas can be integrated into our daily lives.
Right.
We've talked about consciousness, energy, interconnectedness, but, how can these abstract concepts actually be applied in a tangible way?
Right. Yeah, I'm ready to like bridge that gap between the theory and the practice. I know the law of one emphasizes personal growth, moving through those densities towards this greater understanding of unity and making choices that serve others.
hmm
But sometimes those ideals can feel so far removed from like the everyday grind.
I understand that feeling completely.
Right.
It's so easy to get caught up in our routines and lose sight of that bigger picture.
Absolutely.
But here's where I think quantum physics offers such a fascinating perspective.
Right.
Remember that observer effect. It suggests that our observation actually shapes reality on a fundamental level.
Right.
So what if we start observing ourselves through a different lens, a lens of growth, potential, and interconnectedness?
Instead of focusing on like our limitations, we shift our perspective to see ourselves as capable of this positive change and evolution, right?
Exactly. And remember, the law of one emphasizes the power of choice.
Right.
So if we combine that with the observer effect, it suggests that by consciously choosing to focus on those positive aspects, we might actually be influencing the quantum field, making those changes more likely to actually manifest.
Okay, so it's not just wishful thinking. We're actually like actively shaping our reality through our thoughts, beliefs, and intentions.
That's the idea. And it's not about denying the challenge,
Right.
right? We're pretending everything's perfect.
Right.
It's about acknowledging those challenges while also choosing to focus on the potential for growth and positive transformation.
Okay, so how do we apply this, practically speaking? What are some specific steps, we can take to integrate these principles into our everyday lives?
Well, start with awareness.
Right.
Pay attention to your thoughts. Notice the stories you tell yourself. Are they empowering or limiting?
Right.
Are you focusing on what's possible or dwelling on what's not working?
It's like becoming the observer of your own thoughts and beliefs.
Right. Precisely. And then gently start shifting those thoughts and beliefs towards a more positive and expansive framework. So instead of saying, I can't do this,
Right.
ask yourself, how can I approach this differently?
Right.
Instead of dwelling on limitations, focus on possibilities.
Yeah, it's a subtle shift, but it seems like a powerful one.
Yeah.
And it aligns with, the law of one's emphasis on this conscious choice and evolution.
Absolutely. And remember, we're not just these isolated individuals. We're
Mhm.
part of this vast interconnected web of being.
Right.
Quantum physics, with these principles of entanglement and non-locality, supports that.
Yeah.
So consider how your choices and actions impact not just yourself, but the entire system.
Every act of kindness, every moment of compassion, every decision that's rooted in service to others, like, is having this ripple effect, right?
It is, yeah.
Influencing the energy of the whole.
Yeah, it's a powerful concept, and it reminds us that even small actions can have the significant impact. And the law of one encourages practices like meditation and forgiveness, and I think these practices can be even more potent when viewed through the lens of quantum interconnectedness. Forgiveness not just as a personal act, but this wave of healing energy spreading throughout that entire interconnected system.
That's beautiful.
And meditation from a quantum perspective, can be seen as this way of aligning our consciousness with that underlying field of unity.
Right.
It's a practice that cultivates a sense of interconnectedness, it expands our awareness, it helps us tap into that deeper wisdom within.
Okay, so we've explored some pretty powerful concepts today. Consciousness, interconnectedness, observer effect, the power of choice.
Right.
Where do we go from here? What's the next step on this journey of integrating, the law of one and quantum physics?
Well, I would say continue to explore, keep asking questions, don't be afraid to delve deeper into these subjects, read more, research, experiment with different practices.
So it's about staying curious, staying open, and kind of embracing the journey.
Exactly. And remember, this is just the beginning.
Right.
The more we explore, the more we learn, the more profound these connections become.
And that, I think, is a perfect note to end on. So thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive. We hope it sparked your curiosity and inspired you to explore, this intersection of science and spirituality in your own life. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep diving deep.